We're going to be discussing medical procedures gone awry. It's been done on the John and Ken Show for many years. The toll-free number is 1-800-520-1534. We'll probably get to some calls later, but I was really struck by this story this morning when I saw it on a website, and we're lucky to get the woman on the air to talk about it because I'm sure it's not going to be difficult. But again, it does lead to a lawsuit against Simi Valley Hospital. Carol Critchfield is going to come on the show with her attorney, Steve Gambardella. And this deals with something that happened after she had surgery in 2007, which took 4 years to correctly figure out and fix. So we'll let her or her attorney tell the story. Let's bring them on the show. Carol, welcome to the John and Ken Show.
Thank you.
And Steve.
Yes, good afternoon.
All right. Carol, I don't know how you want to do this. If you want to give us just a quick rundown of this just horrific story, you could do that.
Okay. Well, it started in 2007. I had a hysterectomy and some repair work done. Day after I left the hospital, I was back in the ER, terrible pain, nausea, and vomiting. They took an X-ray, said basically that I was severely constipated, and pretty much sent me on my way.
How frustrating is that?
And that was immediately after the surgery?
That was the day after I left the hospital, yes.
The day after, okay.
And then in March of 2009, I had just gone back to work after lunch, and I started feeling nausea, fainting, sweaty palms, and terrible. So my coworker called an ambulance, and I went to Simi Valley Hospital in an ambulance. And they once again took an X-ray, told me they didn't see anything. It was some sort of gastrointestinal problem, and told me to stay away from spicy foods.
At this point, you know there's something off with your body. I mean, we're pretty in tune with things. Was it frustrating for you? Did you know there was something else wrong?
It was frustrating because I'd also started having symptoms of having ovarian cancer. I had written that off. So it was like a wait-and-see game.
Well, I was going to ask, Carol, between 2007 and 2009, the two stories you told, the surgery and then this, what were you experiencing in those 2 years? Every day you felt something, or?
I just never felt good. Is basically what it is, and I when something is off, I just kind of attributed it to the fact that I had the surgery, and I didn't really know what to expect after the surgery in the way of how I was supposed to feel.
You just thought maybe it's the new normal that I'm going to have these problems.
Describe exactly, not that specifically, but when they told you it was probably constipation, and then a couple of years later it's spicy foods. How much time did they spend with you? What did they do? I know you said they took X-rays, but did it seem like they were really working hard to figure out what was wrong with you? Because those seem like rather simple, quote, explanations.
Not really. I mean, it was like, well, let's see, we'll take an X-ray, and basically they came back and said that they didn't see anything, that it was something in gastrointestinal, that they really didn't know what it was, but just to stay away from spicy foods.
All right, so now we're in 2009. What happens next?
And so then early 2011, I started experiencing some bleeding, and I went to my gynecologist. She said she couldn't find anything really wrong with me other than the fact that my tissue was sensitive because I was old. I mean, she didn't sugarcoat it. Mm-hmm. And then she says, well, just to be on the safe side, we'll take a ultrasound. So I went in for the ultrasound. She called me back, said, you have a cyst on your ovary, and insisted on taking my ovaries out, which she knew that I did not want to have done.
Oh.
And I said, okay. So then she scheduled the surgery for August of 2011. I had the surgery, and when I came out of it, my husband didn't really know what to say. He didn't want to tell me. He wanted me to hear it from the doctor, but he ended up telling me that apparently when they were in there, it was not a cyst. It was a mass in my small intestine, and that I would need another surgery because the surgeon that was on call said they couldn't do it then because it would have compromised the fact that they did, in fact, go ahead and take my ovaries out anyway when she knew I did not want that.
Oh, my God.
Well,
so
And Carol, also,
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, also the tale that needs to be told is that when Carol first presented to the emergency room, an abdominal X-ray was taken and did show and disclose the presence of a metallic object in her abdomen. And again, in March of 2009, an X-ray was taken and did show the presence of a metallic object in her abdomen. And then you fast forward to August of 2011, they do a CT scan, and yes, there is the presence of something overlying her ovary. And at each turn of the way here, the doctors saw something that was unique, unusual, and some of which thought it could be related to the surgery. And indeed it was. It was a marker placed in a sponge. It's meant to be seen on X-ray.
Well,
wow.
And there's a chance maybe that they took the X-rays but didn't take the time to get them back and to observe them and to go over them.
Well, that's a function. That's what they're supposed to do.
That's absolutely what they're supposed to do. But sometimes in the ER, you know how things get.
Well, the radiologist is supposed to compare the prior studies, and when you have something unusual, they should have looked and they should have determined that this was something that was a retained foreign object or that deserved restudy. But this is. Patient safety is based on a platform of redundancy, and what happened to Carol intraoperatively was that nobody knew what they were doing. The surgeons didn't know when the counts were to be made. The staff in the operating room didn't make the proper counts. They're supposed to count the sharps and sponges before they close the patient up. So when I talked to the surgeon, I said, "Doctor," I said, "when are counts supposed to be made?" "Well, before and after." "Well, that's not a correct answer." "So, doctor, how many patients have you closed up and found after the closure that you had a count that could not be verified because you were missing a sharp or a sponge?" And he said 5 to 10 times. I said, "You had to go back and reopen the patient 5 to 10 times because you couldn't get your counts correct?" He said, "That's correct."
Wow. All right. We're going to put you on hold because I want to ask you a couple more questions. But before we go, Carol, to recap, in the end, they found a surgical sponge apparently in your intestine.
Right. After that surgery in August, the very next day, I had another surgery because I had internal bleeding. Oh. And that was another 4 hours. And then when I came back in November of 2011 and had the surgery for the mass, it turned out that it was not inside my intestine. It was on the outside, and scar tissue had enveloped it. And so then they removed that, and then
a length of your intestine too, and a length of a piece of your intestine as well.
Yes, and they had to remove that as well. Then I had internal bleeding again, although that did not result in surgery. When they released me 2 weeks later, I had a bowel blockage. It's back in the hospital again due to the large amount of blood that had coagulated near the incision. And I lost 25 pounds in the process, and it was a mess.
The only thing I was confused about when they were going to remove your ovaries, that was connected to all your problems, which turned out to be the surgical sponge?
Yeah, they had the presence of this object overlying, I believe it was her left ovary, which they felt what they interpreted to be a cyst on her ovary.
Right.
And it turned out it was this mass of scar tissue combining the intestine with the sponge that had been left behind 4 years before.
Not only did
hang on, you two.
Yeah, not only did they miss that sponge, but she had to go through several unnecessary surgeries. Cut many, many times.
All right, we're talking to Carol Critchfield and her attorney, Steve Gambardella, and quite a story if you've just tuned in. She is suing Simi Valley Hospital. She ended up losing part of her intestine because surgeons left a sponge inside of her after a hysterectomy in 2007 and didn't find that it was the sponge, as you mentioned. As she mentioned, scar tissue had grown over it, had really complicated things, and she had gone to the hospital a couple of times in the ensuing 4 years because she was having problems medically, but they didn't discover it until 2011. More with Carol and her attorney, Steve Gambardella, coming up on the John and Ken Show with Shannon sitting in for John. All right, John and Ken Show. Here on KFI, of course, John is on vacation. Shannon's sitting in. Amy King has the news. We're talking to Carol Critchfield and her attorney, Steve Gambardella. Now, this is quite a story. Every now and then, we have touched on the subject of medical procedures gone awry. Carol went in for a hysterectomy back in 2007 at Simi Valley Hospital, and apparently they left a sponge inside of her after the surgery, but it took 4 years to find that out. Even though she had gone back a couple of times with some serious symptoms, they said things like, well, constipation.
Stop eating spicy food.
Yeah. So eventually they discovered a mass, and they thought it might be a problem with her ovaries. They went to remove those, and that led to them in 2011, 4 years later, finally finding the surgical sponge left inside of her in 2007. So clearly there is a lawsuit against Simi Valley Hospital. Carol and Steve, the only thing we got from the CBS 2 website was the response from the hospital. They put out one of those statements. We take responsibility, blah, blah, blah. We self-reported the incident, and it was investigated by the California Department of Public Health. It occurred in 2007, and we've now implemented additional processes that further promote patient safety. Got any response to that?
Well, I sure do. They said in that statement that they self-reported out of concern for patient safety and their high standards at the hospital. Well, the reality is they're obligated under the law to report unusual occurrences. This is a never event. It should never happen. There are multiple redundant safety systems built in to prevent the loss of a sponge or a clamp. But incidentally, this hospital, not only was it fined $25,000 in Carol's case, but the following year, a surgical clamp 8 inches in length was left in a patient's abdomen. When they went to remove it, they ruptured the patient's spleen. Oh. The patient nearly bled to death, and they managed to save that patient, but then the hospital was fined $50,000 for that misadventure, another never event at this hospital, which touts itself to be Ventura County's safest hospital.
$25,000 and $50,000, that's nothing in the big scheme of hospital finances.
You would have that correct. It is nothing.
Carol, how do you feel today?
Well, I continue to live with waking up every day feeling really lousy, pain. It takes me a while to get myself together every day. It's ongoing. It doesn't go away.
What are you guys looking for then in this suit against the hospital?
Well, as you may know, there is a limitation on the amount of damages currently in effect in the state of California that's been in effect for 34 years now, since the Medical Injury Compensation Reform Act was enacted, and actually 39 years. And the limit is $250,000. It doesn't matter if you're killed. It doesn't matter if you're a wife of 10 children and you die or you're horribly maimed. The maximum you can recover for pain and suffering is limited to $250,000. However, that is subject to a ballot amendment in November that would raise that amount from cost of living increases to today's rate, which would be close to $1 million for pain and suffering.
All right. Thanks, both of you, for coming on the show. And, Carol, good luck with your case.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you so much.
All right. It's Carol Critchfield and attorney Steve Gambardella. And Shannon wanted to point out this Loyola University study.
Yeah, it says 1,500 medical instruments are left inside patients every year. About 1,000 of those are sponges.
Well, people perform surgeries, right? Mistakes are made. But remember, this was probably 15 years ago, we had a lot of people that were like getting the wrong appendage removed.
Yeah.
So then hospitals instituted policies that include taking a magic marker and marking like the leg or
that.
Or the foot
or like
or
if
whatever.
you're going to get a kidney, they got to mark it on your side.
Right and left kidney. Yeah, they got to be
terrible.
careful.
It's like,
that.
Come on, you can't get it together. You can't focus long enough to take out the right kidney.
What I really wondered in Carol's case is like, constipation, spicy food. It just sounds like a simple way out. This woman had major surgery in 2007, and I don't care. You do an X-ray. You think you might have been a little more thorough than that? It just really struck me when I saw her story. It's just Very tough.
Yeah, it's tough, too. She says she had 4 children. She never had stretch marks. And she said she was really proud of that, that, she kept herself in great condition. And with all these unnecessary surgeries, she was cut open several times. I mean, her body's like a freaking roadmap now.
All right.
It's terrible.
If you have medical procedure gone awry, perhaps, as Shannon pointed out, an instrument was left in your body. Or even something much simpler and smaller. But this stuff happens. Yeah, people are performing these surgeries, dental, medical. Call us, 1-800-520-1534. That's 1-800-520-1534. John and Ken Show with Shannon. All right. That's right. KFI, AM 640, more stimulating talk. Isn't it now? Surgical procedures gone awry. We just talked to a woman that really had a rough run at Simi Valley Hospital, and she's now suing them because back in 2007 she had a hysterectomy, and they left the sponge in there during surgery, and they're fine it for 4 years. She ends up losing part of her small intestine and her ovaries because of all the complications with that. So we're going to take your call at 1-800-520-1534. Want to remind you about the Moist line. Good timing. Anytime you want to leave a message. And that's what the sponges are for, to like soak up the blood.
Yeah. And they use a lot of them.
No, well, that's why you're supposed to keep count of them.
You do have to count them.
And he said that they have a certain metallic marker on them, which should be picked up in x-rays, and apparently they have screwed up that too. They're claiming they were voted one of the best hospitals, so I'm not really taking a strong side in this. I just feel really bad for the woman. The Moist line number is 1-818-5MOIST-9, 1-818-566-4789. Let's see what we have on the line for medical procedures gone awry. I mean, it could be dental, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be that dramatic, but it has to be something of a story. Patricia, you're on the John and Ken Show with Shannon.
Hello, Shannon. How are you?
Excellent. What happened to you?
Oh, I got injured on the job, and the carpal tunnel surgery was a complete failure with a severe complication.
Which was what?
I lost the use of my left hand, my fingers curled up on me, and I have a neurological disease that's very rare. It's called complex regional pain syndrome.
So the carpal tunnel surgery, where was it, your wrist?
Yes, it was done on my left wrist, because I had been injured on the job, and both my hands and wrists were subjected to carpal tunnel diagnosed. And the surgeon went through an outpatient surgery center on a Saturday morning and did a surgery for carpal tunnel, and it was a complete disaster. I lost everything.
Wow, what, did you recover any, did you sue?
No, he died of pancreatic cancer.
Oh.
Well, you almost said that joyfully.
He took me to the grave. Mm-hmm.
He what?
He took me to the grave. He died after the surgery, after we completely diagnosed this problem with a bone scan. We did a 3-phase nuclear bone scan in September 2003 after the surgery was done in February 2003, and he couldn't handle it, so he got pancreatic cancer and died, and I lost my case because I couldn't resurrect the dead.
You can, unless there's an estate you could sue or something, right?
Yeah,
That's too
so
bad.
either way, I have a permanent problem. I have a neurological disease that has no cure. It's called complex regional pain syndrome. It affects your flight and fight response, that get up and go effect, the adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
And I've been like this. I've been totally on fire for over 11 and a half years. And that's just the way it is when you go under the knife.
Wow.
All right,
Patricia has a
calling.
beautiful voice. She's talking about these horrible things happening to her and horrible diseases, and she sounds very...
I thought there was a definite positive uptick when she announced the guy died of pancreatic cancer. It was almost like, oh, well, served him right. Let's go to, what's this name?
Joyce.
It is Joyce. My screen is off. Joyce, you're on the John and Ken Show. What happened to you?
Oh, hi, Ken and Shannon. One year, this was a long, long time ago, and probably 40 years ago, I thought I had lost a contact. There was a hard lens, and I was camping, and I took it out, so I thought, and it blew away. Well, about 15 years later, I'm trying to put my other contacts in, and I pull up my eyelid, and this contact is stuck. Has grown into my eyelid.
Oh, my God.
Dear heavens.
Wait, how much time had lapsed?
Probably 10, 15 years.
Oh, my gosh.
And, of course, I've been going to the eye doctor regularly, and
Wow.
no one ever saw it.
And they never saw it.
No. So they had to cut it out.
And this is like one of the old-fashioned contact lenses, the really hard ones?
Yes, one of those. Yeah, really the hard lenses.
That's terrible. The moral of the story is bring your glasses when you go camping. Leave the contacts at home.
I did. Yeah, I did. It was pretty bad, but, the doctors and the nurses all came in and they had to take pictures and the whole bit.
All right, thanks for calling the John and Ken show. Oh, I can't imagine that.
But it doesn't sound like she had any pain over the years in the eye. It was just stuck in there and growing into her eyelid.
Oh,
that's terrible.
That's just